Hello everybody, YouTube land. If you've got a Neff or a Siemens dishwasher, then the compact water heater stroke pump unit, this module's got a pump in the back, and also it does the circulation for the spray arms, pumping the soapy hot water around to be thrashed around inside the dishwasher. Now these are usually, in the UK, these are £70 or £80, and the trouble is the ones that fit the basic Bosch dishwashers haven't got the same connections as the Siemens and Neff dishwashers. So I'll just show you this pump. If you just compare, here we've got 3 large contacts and 3 small. You see that? So 3 large contacts for ground and power for the element, and the other 3 contacts are for the thermistor and ground, I think. So that's for the temperature sensing. So you've got 2 sets of contacts on there, but on the older pumps, on Siemens and Neff, they have 6 large connectors. You see 6 large 6mm spade connectors, and you know the looms won't fit. So what people have done, because actually the reason is that you'd be forced to buy this pump. You'd be forced to buy this pump for Neff Siemens, which is 165 odd pounds, compared to this one for the Bosch and Bosch dishwashers and some of the others, and this is like 70 or 80 pounds, but it's got a different connector on. So you can't fit one of these into the machine, even though it's exactly the same electrically, because it has a different connector. So to that end, you buy a kit now, and the kit's got this pump in, which is the cheap pump, and now a lot of people are supplying this wiring loom, and you can see this wiring loom is intended for you to fit into the unit together with this wiring loom, and you remove some wires from the controller, you cut some other wires, and then you wire this in to the controller, so that then you can plug in the cheap pump. Okay, so you can get the £70 pump instead of £150 pump. Alright, and I didn't really find the actual genuine part on sale very many places, and where it was very expensive, but these kits seem to be available all over the place. Alright, so I'm just going to run through it. I'm not very happy with the thermistor connector on the this is the new small connector on this, plugs into those 3, and yeah, it's just come with these crimps like you would use on a car, or 12 volt low voltage, and this is clearly obviously a thermistor supply, and what you're supposed to do is use a proper pair of crimping pliers. You can see the width of this has been done with the crimping pliers, which I'll show you when we go down the workshop to show you the actual procedure. And yeah, they're expecting you to do it with cutters. They show you in the diagram, they show you crimping those with a pair of cutters. All right, here, no, not here. Yeah, this is just showing, they kind of glossed over it. The trouble is, if you use cutters, this type of cutters there, to crimp these without the proper crimping pliers, often you can cut straight through, and it's a very dodgy way of making a connection as well. It's not really that professional, to be honest, these things. So on mine I might just cut those off and put some sleeved soldered connections on, just to make sure that we've got a good connection and the integrity is good, because I don't trust these. Quite often you crimp them as hard as you can, and with the thin wires you just pull them and they come out. So you don't want your dishwasher failing due to a bad connection on the ends of these 3 wire joiners. Can you see inside there? Is that you're supposed to crush it, but you can't crush it to this width unless you have the correct tool, which is usually used for car electrics. So the rest of the dishwasher's got decent quality crimps and connectors, and then you're going to stick this in there. Not great. So I'm going to use a different method, but you can use this if you feel comfortable, but I'll show you the correct pliers to do that with when we get down there. And it does come with its instructions. It explains the alternate or old, which is and the new. Okay, so we're changing it, and there's instructions in here. It shows you to cut the power wires off, cut the thermistor wires off here, just cut them right next to the loom, and it shows you to remove the cover from the controller, which we'll do, and then cut off both of the power connectors, and then into those power connection points you plug those 2. These 2 go into the power connections, and that end goes into the motor along with the reattached thermistor plug, all right? So that's what you do. And so yeah, so we're gonna go through the process of fitting this into the machine and just step by step through the instructions, and then we'll see what problems we come across. So that's the explanation. It's the new cheap pumps don't fit the expensive brands of machines. Yeah, next section we're going down the workshop and we'll fit the pump, and you can see what's what and what should we try and struggle to get it in. Okay, so see you in a moment. The actual pump heater motor, the compact water heating unit, which is the motor and the pump in one modular unit. It's got a pipe coming in from the front, directly in front. Imagine if you, in line with the axis of the motor, there's a pipe at the front, and yet there's another pipe down there. If we just zoom in slightly, you can see that buff yellow coloured pipe with a pipe clip fitted just down in there where my finger's pointing to now. You can see that. Now that clip is very difficult to remove because it's a crimped on type clip, and sometimes you can get hold of the clip and pull it down, but I found the best way to get the pump motor out is obviously unplug the plugs like we just showed you, and then remove this rubber support bung. It's quite stiff to remove, and I would advise that you take it off completely remove it, because otherwise when you're trying to get the pipe back on, it's difficult to see what you're doing, because you need to see. So now you're faced with what to do about this clip down here. Just something to point to it with. What to do about this clip down there, this one. Now sometimes you can see it and you can wiggle the clip around or make it come off, but it's very difficult to get to that because it's a crimp variety, and the preferred method is to cut them off with a Dremel. Alright, well clearly if you go down there with a Dremel you might cut something else, and worst of all you might cut the top pipe. So now that we've got this rear thing off, you can quite often carefully just get hold of the pump like this and pull it down to the right. I'm rotating the body of the pump down to the right to pull that pipe out, and then away like this. So you have to kind of just maneuver it until it comes free. It's a fair amount of force required, side to side, and there's the pump removed. It's an ugly process, but it's the way that I do it and the way I've seen people do it. And then just to scan what we've got, have a look at what we've got left with behind there. You can see there's the two pipes. There's the one that's in line with the axis to the actual shaft of the motor, this one. There's one in line with the axis to the shaft of the motor, this one, and then there's the up pipe which has a clip on it. And here's the clip that's dropped off. So there's that top, it's one of those types of clips, okay. So we're going to throw that away, and when we put it back we'll refit with the a proper pipe clip, an adjustable screw pipe clip, and then we should be able to tighten that from the front, okay. So that's what you're left with, and just make sure this hasn't been torn. They come out quite easily, but you do have to use a little bit more force than you'd think you'd like to if you're a careful engineer and you're always careful about things. You might not enjoy it so much, but that's the way it is at the moment. And yeah, so that's out. Now we can look at putting the motor back in. I'm going to run over these crimping tools and cables. So we've got the motor and the looms, which we've talked about already, and the crimping tools. There's two types of crimping tool for crimping this kind of ferrule connector. Is the cheap version, which they have in most crimping kits, which are the you can see on the jaws, you can see a red and yellow dot. There should be a blue one in the middle, but it's dropped off, and that gives you the gauges of the wires and the locations between those jaws where the red pimple is where we're supposed to crimp this connector. Alright, you can see down in the middle of the connector, I don't know if you can see, and there is a little stop. So the idea is you skin the wire, take the insulation off the wire, fold on thin wire, you have to fold it over, back over the insulation, push the hole up the hole to that stop, and then you apply the crimp. Okay, I'll demonstrate doing that in a moment, you'll see it. And then for the more expensive version of the crimp tool is this one, which is probably similar to the jaws that they used at the factory to make those looms. Okay, you can see that one's red, blue and yellow as well. So the problem is using these types of cutters, or that one, or even this type of cutters to crimp this between the jaws to actually close down that metal insulation to clamp the cable. The problem with using these is they're quite sharp and they will cut through, as probably with those, or those would be damaged because they're too small. And the other type, if you are going to use the cable connector ferrules, then see if you can get yourself a pair of kind of really blunt electrician's pliers or something with a blunt edge to crimp them, because otherwise if you squeeze too hard in the attempt to make a sound connection, it will cut through and you'll end up with no ferrule left. Okay, so we'll demonstrate the use of these on that in the office in a moment. Alright, and the other thing I've got here is some tie wraps to wrap the loom together, and a sharp knife to slice the insulation or the tape off the loom to restructure the loom. Okay, so that's what I've got, so let's get on with it. Okay, to access the loom you're going to have to take the cover off the controller. Just pull the clip there, and the lid comes off. And the looms that we're looking at cutting off are these ones at the right hand side. You can see these are the same looms that go all the way through to this old connector for the motor, this one. Okay, so we're just going to pull that off. It'll come off for us. Unclip it from there, and I think the instructions say that this loom should be cut at this point, just after where the first insulation band is fitted. So look at where I'm cutting. Think twice, cut once, as they say. You can see these are the plugs that go to the end connectors on the right hand side by that feature. Okay, to the right. And we are going to hold them there, and okay, we've got it. None of the small wires, only the big wires, and cut them off. Okay, so that's that part done. So this is the loom at the other side. I'll just show you where we are. There's the controller hanging down, loom comes up through here. At the first tape there are 3 red wires and a green and yellow wire going back to the old heavy duty power connector for the heaters. Alright, there's the 3 wire plug with the grey wires for the thermostat. You don't want to touch those, but where my finger is, I can't really see it easily on screen, but you would just cut through those. Okay, so you've got 3 red and 1 green and yellow wire to cut off this motor wire, so you cut and remove that. Okay, so on the end of the loom you can see here that we've got 1 green wire. The other 3 red wires I've cut and pulled back through the loom. I actually loosened the tape here so that I could just remove the other loom completely. So the old wires I've taken out. You can choose to do that or not. So we now have to cut these 3 wires on this one and then rejoin them onto the other plug, which is we'll go through that procedure next. Yeah, if we look at this carefully, this is the procedure, step 4, which deals with the removal of the old plug, cut that one across, and then joining the wires that went onto there in the same order as is connected to the new plug. Okay, so we have to make sure that before we cut these, we identify which is 1, 2 and 3. Otherwise you may get mixed up. I'm just going to cut them and fit them one at a time, and I can't get mixed up, and I can check as I go through. But you could put some tape around each one with 1, 2 and 3 on for each of the wires, but it's important that they go back on to the plug in the same orientation, with the wires coming out of the plug onto the new plug in the same order as illustrated by these dotted lines. If you get them mixed up, transposed, you'll get indeterminate results. Really, it probably won't work. Okay, so pay attention to that. I'm sure you will anyway, but I'm just going to go through that procedure now. Alright, so first of all, 3 wires to our small plug, 3 small grey wires going to the plug. We're going to do them in the order 1, 2, 3. The plugs are oriented the same way, so this is number 1, which joins onto there. So first of all, cut number 1. So we've cut number 1, and we're going to join it onto number 1 at the bottom of this plug, okay, which is that one there. We take number 1 wire that we've cut off, and we carefully remove about 7 to 8 millimeters of the sleeving. Okay. Then twist it into a small pigtail. locate number 1 on the actual connector, which is here, this one here, okay, number 1. Check it's the same one as we cut off. It is. Cut off the right hand side one or the lower one, so the lower one has been cut off, okay. So we then take this, bend it back on itself so the insulation, sorry, the conductor is folded back over the insulation, squeeze it flat, and then with your thumbnail, just get your thumbnail and offer up to how far this should go in. It should go into about there, where that partition is halfway up the actual ferrule, okay. So the name of the game is to hold onto the cable tight and get this to go into the ferrule. There we are. So that's fully in now, okay. Let's pull it out, you can see how far that goes in. Put it back in again. So it's in there, alright. So I'm going to use the cheap pliers because it's more likely, I showed you the other way how to do this with the cutters, but I'm going to use these, which are the low cost ones, which are the ones that are mostly around. And you can see the distance between here and here that this one has been squeezed. You want to get roughly the same distance on that side so you hit the metal ferrule inside in the right place. And then you just give it, holding it in place, making sure it's there, just give it a mighty squeeze, okay. And you can see it's done a reasonable job, but not a fantastic job of it. And it's give it a good tug to make sure it won't come out. So I'm just going to rip through and do the other two. So cut the second wire, skin the second wire back, twist the tails, fold it back on itself like this. Take the second wire from the plug, which is this one. Again, this one here, don't get them mixed up. 1, 2, 3 to 1, 2, 3. Right, we want it going about that far, so hold on to the wire tight. Wiggle it about until you can get it to go in. Okay, I can feel that's gone in, that's actually holding. You can feel it's a friction fit, which is good, so there's less room for any bad connection issues in there. Again, choose your point. Give it a mighty squeeze. Squeeze as hard as you can, basically. That one's good. And then we do finally number 3. So we've got number 3 on here, still left over to do. Number 3, the third one along there. And you've got the third one left on this one, okay, with the connectors in the same orientation. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to do this one. So cut there. Skin. Twist, bend, push in. You feel it go in, there it is, it's all the way in, hold it in, judge the distance and squeeze it. Okay, all 3 are now connected, and I'm just going to put some tape around those just to stop any drips or anything else causing us an issue when it's installed. Can hold them in position properly. It's not very pretty, but it'll just stop any stress or any vibration from the machine working those loose. Okay, so I put some tape around mine. Alright, so there they are taped up and ready to go back in. So when we've got the tie wraps, we can just tie wrap this loom back together. Now it's time to connect the loom to controllers. The loom's got, on one end, it's got the 3-pin plug that goes into the motor. On the other end of the loom wires, there's these 2 plugs, a 3-pin, and a 2-pin, okay? Now the 3-pin, they just go in, if you get hold of the controller, and at this end, here's the connections that we disconnected before. These cannot be plugged in the wrong way round or in the wrong location, because they have these little pips on the front, here and here, at different locations which match the body of this connector, so that you cannot plug them in the wrong way or in the wrong place. So on the end, with the cables facing the same way as these cables are facing, on the end we push the 2-pin, lock it in position, hear it click, and next to it goes the 3-pin, okay? Now these wires need to be looped back up along the main loom, and you notice that the earth wire is still here. I've pulled the other wires out, but the earth wire that we cut off is still here, and that earth wire has another one of these crimps on. That earth wire has to be connected to this earth wire. Alright, so you've got to make that earth connection. Now you can make it here and fold it back on the loom. That's fine, it just means that the earth wire is a bit longer, so let's do that now. This is slightly thicker wire, so if you just take off the same 7 or 8 millimeters, okay, 7 or 8 millimeters of conductor, twist it up, feed it into the ferrule until you feel it engage, and then crimp. To make sure that's made a good connection, obviously it's a safety connection, right, so that's good and solid, so that's in there now as well. So if I just fetch the tie wraps wherever they've gone, we have some tie wraps. Just small black tie wraps, nothing special, and we'll just move the camera slightly and just fix these wires into the loom here. Okay, if you remember, these wires were tucked into this part here, so we'll tuck those back in as well. Okay, that's there. So there you can see the loom in position, the motor wires in position. We put a tie wrap around here just to keep the wire looms safe, and then we've got the earth wire just loops up and around and back in, so that's now connected. So everything is now connected, and we're ready to reinstall the motor and plug in the 3 motor plugs. Alright, so time to put the motor back in, and it's quite easy really. There's other videos that show you this. You've got 2 pipes that connect this one and this one. This one goes up to the top, that one goes to the front onto there. So the central pipe on here has got to go on there, and this one has got to do an up and under and go up inside there. What you might find easier, because the clip tends to get trapped if you let the clip fall down, because you've got to put a new clip on, okay, it's just tighten the clip up until it pushes on the pipe and then stays up out of the way where you don't want it. It's not tight, it's not going to stop the nozzle going in the pipe, but it does, because if you let it fall down, it gets in the way of this going all the way up, and you can't get the clip up, so it's a pain. And also remember to have the screw facing you. That screw on the end needs to be facing you, otherwise you won't be able to tighten it up, and then you'll be in trouble, right? You'll be in trouble. I'm going to roll my sleeves up now. Actually, no, I'm going to keep them down because that will help with the exposure, I think. Right, okay, so here's the pump going back in with the new connector on, new type pump. This pipe here, this small pipe, has got to go up and under and up that pipe there. So you need to sort of put the pump in and just turn that down like that so you can get it in. Did you see that go in there? Okay, so if I just put this in like that, facing this way, and then just tip that under there, and then get that pipe to go up inside there. You've seen that go up, and then you can carefully swing this around and engage the front pipe, alright? So the name of the game now is to push the motor, twist it in that direction, so it goes up the pipe. If I can get it in there, that is. She cried. And then you swing this around, and then you push on this pump to engage this on the front of the pump housing. It doesn't feel that fixed, but it is. It won't go any further on. You can feel in there with your finger that it's gone all the way in. And you can see here, look, the pipe that engages with the pipe that comes down from the top. It's got a shoulder on it, so the shoulder is aligned with the pipe. Alright, so that's in now. And what we can do is put this rubber clip back on, this one, and put the rubber clip back on to hold the pump into position. Okay, now the pump is hanging vertically. If the clip is hanging vertically, if the clip was sloping forwards here so it was further out, you'd know that the centre boss is not in. And now what we need to do is just maneuver this clip in here So there's a clip down there we need to tighten up. So I'm just going to move this clip so there's about a 5mm gap between the bottom edge of that clip and the end of the pipe, and then tighten it up. I can't get in there with the camera, so I'll do it off screen, but we're talking about this screw here that's on our cable clamp. Okay, that one down there, that one there. So we've got our 3 plugs plugged into the motor. We've got the ones in the centre of the picture. They're the actual power to the heater, thermistor, and then the feedback to the tachometer over there. And also, because these leads are quite short on the motor, just make sure the one down here, that one there, there's the motor, down to the left of the motor is plugged in properly, okay? So all our plugs are back in. It's time to manoeuvre this controller back into position. Now you notice on the end of the controller, that's the actual main socket into which the mains plug is plugged, which is protrudes through this opening back round the back of the unit, okay, for the mains connection. Now this mains connection, you see it's got a gap between the mains, the escutcheon on the mains connector and the case. Well, that slot has to be engaged in this detail down here. You can see that. See, that's it engages there next to the opening, and so it's quite tricky to get it back in. I can't really do it on camera, but you have to be aware that this end has to be in exactly the right place before this will slot down and lock in those tabs. So first of all, I'm just going to put the lid back onto there and put the controller back. So the lid goes back on there, and then put the controller back. I can't do it with on camera because I can't get access and film at the same time, but just beware that those slotting details have to match up at this end before you can drop the controller down. Okay, I found an easy way of doing this actually. If you just look through here, you can just see the edge of the connector and the slot, and if you come around the back and then manoeuvre this by pushing with the other, pushing from the far end to here until you get this connector engaged in that slot that starts halfway down, and then it goes down quite easily after that. So have a look around the back and to line it up by peeking underneath. Okay, so it's running on the bench, it's halfway through its cycle. I'm just looking inside to make sure nothing's leaking before I put the side back on. It's nice and dry, there's nothing leaking from the pump, and everything seems to be working fine. Side, it's on a 65-degree wash, the side is hot, and I've got the pipe running down into a 20-litre bucket, which is going to overfill, I think. So if you do this, make sure you change your bucket. So I'm just put the sides back on. The heater is now fixed, the motor's running, everything is done, so it's working. I hope you find that interesting. If you have a moment and you're interested in more things, then just hit the subscribe button down there and leave me a like, because I like likes. Thanks very much for watching.